details, let me just explain to you some of the journey that we have gone through when we started this. As you know, Cambodia operates their Best Trader Incentive Mechanism program, which, so to speak, in international best practice terms, is a compliance program. Similar to many other customs administrations around the world, it is a program that is giving benefits to traders that show a high level of compliance. So it is, if you so wish, not much different from an AEO program, but there are a few things more that need to be considered, and we'll come to that later. So when we started our support, SOP for GDCE, and came up with a first draft of a self-assessment questionnaire. And this certainly is the point where, you know, the interest from the business community would come in, and we will spend some time in the afternoon to explain what we have developed so far and how and when these tools will become available to enable you to practically start your application process, if you're interested, of course. Because some of the principles I'll explain will still uphold. And then, of course, Arise Plus looks into capacity building, supporting workshops such as this today and previous workshops that we held, supporting GDC in awareness raising and promotion. So that's our program so far. In which we operated was, and the strategy is around those, looking into the international agreements that exist for AEO. And there are quite a number of them which should be taken into account. There is on one hand, of course, the source, the origin document of the AEO, which is the Safe Framework of Standards. In particular, Pillar 1, Pillar 2, looking at the program and the standards around AEO. But at the same time, as I said, we want to maintain the BTIM program. We also look at the World Customs Organization Revised Kyoto Convention, which doesn't necessarily include an AEO, but is, if you so wish, kind of the origin for so-called trusted trader or authorized persons programs. And the BTIM is exactly this. So the BTIM is fulfilling all the requirements that the Revised Kyoto Convention is putting. And the AEO program, in the end, will satisfy the commitments that Cambodia has made under the Safe Framework of Standards. Both together will enable Cambodia also to be fully compliant with the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement Article 7.7. Even though it is a Category C, I think it's fair to say that very soon Cambodia can announce success in the implementation. And then, of course, we have the ASEAN Agreement on Customs, which is also a very important agreement. It is a very important arrangement and community. A lot of the trade here in the country takes place with the neighboring countries. And it is important that this trade is being even further facilitated and that AEO programs are being recognized against each other so that everybody benefits. So ASEAN also puts a very important milestone here into the strategy. And then we looked into national policies that Cambodia has set, which we took into account as well. So the basis for our AEO considerations was the definition as provided for by the World Customs Organization Safe Framework of Standards. It doesn't say much, but it includes a few important pointers. That AEO is a party that will be approved by GDCE Here in this case, we have instances around the world where the customs administrations also delegates some of the authority to others to do the certification. But in this case, here GDC will approve the party as complying with the supply chain security standards, and we will explain them in more detail. But it's important also to identify that the AEO program is open to everybody. So it's not limited to a manufacturer, it's not limited to an importer here in Cambodia, but they are also applying generally to AEOs. AEO is a voluntary program. There is an obligation to become an AEO. So it is fair to say that it is voluntary, it's not a mandatory program. But of course, as soon as you decide to become an AEO, the commitments that you make are mandatory. So joining the program is voluntary, but within the program, it is mandatory. So it's up to you to decide whether AEO, more or less 24/7, around the clock, every time, every day, to be in control. You need to control your business in any aspect of the equation. And this is more or less what customs will verify and will find out, that you are in control. Means being in control means that you have appropriate organizational measures within your company, regardless of the size of the company. Even if you're only a one-man show, you need to demonstrate that you have plans in place that you identify any potential risk. So having in place appropriate organization measures in the fields related to AEO criteria. It means practically nothing else than applying risk management. This should include both customs-related risk as well as security and safety-related risk. And that you do take steps by yourself. Nobody has to tell you to take those steps. You have to do this by yourself. That means to be in control. So don't wait for customs to tell you what to do. You have to do this on your own. That's very important. Take steps to mitigate any potential risk. So if you know that you are receiving goods from a particular country where customs has a particular focus on, in terms of customs risk, in terms of undervaluation, in terms of course, also add aspects that so far has not been included in your program, in the BTIM program. So certainly the demonstrated compliance with customs requirements is something that also is already included in the BTIM. So is the satisfactory management of commercial records, so that you have a proper bookkeeping system. You don't have to operate the most fancy system in place. It only means that there is a structure, and there are secure and safe places where you store data. And that your operation is financially viable. You don't have to be the most profitable company, not at all. That doesn't actually matter, but you have to be viable. So if you're constantly producing losses, if you're close to bankruptcy, then you might not be the most ideal candidate for an AEO. But that's obvious. I mean, it's self-evident. So financial viability just means that you have sufficient cash to operate your company, to pay customs duties and taxes, etc. And then we move into the security aspects of the program, and this is where the AEO differs from the BTIM. So on top of the BTIM criteria, commercial compliance, record keeping, and financially viable, you will have to satisfy safety and security requirements. Looking at how to protect your premises, whether it's a small office or it's a big chemical plant, doesn't matter. Depending on the size of the company, you will have to take appropriate measures to protect your premises. For an office, it means just maintained properly and highly motivated. This is better? Okay, good. So, okay. So as I said earlier, we also looked at the WTO and make sure that in the strategy the country can satisfy commitments that they have made with regard to WTO instruments, but also with regard to WTO instruments. And we also looked at the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, which also includes a provision on what they call authorized operator. It sounds pretty similar, but has some significant differences in there. While the WTO Safe Harbor Standards is very much focusing on the security elements and only indicates, customs should provide benefits, the TFA is very specific because they are listing a number of benefits here, in total 7 at a minimum, and from those 7, countries should apply at least 3. So we made sure that in the program that we developed, we will satisfy exactly that requirement. Okay. Speaking of benefits, I think it was an important element as well here to see, okay, from the BTIM program, which already included quite a number of benefits, which of those actually have been applied in practice, which of them have worked well, and where we can do better. So of course we took inspiration from the international instruments, the TFA on the one hand, the Safe Framework of Standards on the other. And clearly there are a number of benefits that stand out quite clearly. And I think that is that an AEO can reasonably expect that they are being released quicker than shipments from a non-AEO. I think that is a reasonable expectation. So faster release times and fewer inspections. Being an AEO means that customs has identified that you can be trusted. So if I can trust you, it means I don't have to inspect cargo from you as often as I would inspect cargo from so-called unknown sources. So I think these are 2 of the most outstanding benefits that need to be taken into account in the day-to-day operation and in the clearance processes, in the IT systems, etc. But on top of that, there might be a few other aspects that could be very interesting to a company. For example, deferred payment. Having to pay only once a month of all the duties and taxes that are accrued over a month is a financial incentive to companies. It will enable you to better manage your cash flow and use your financial resources in a more meaningful way.